Hello, welcome to this video. This is round 3 coverage of this year's Tata Steel tournament. And one thing I have to say right away, that round was more interesting than round 2. That's good news. The other thing I need to say is that due to some commitment later, I have exactly, let's say 55 minutes to record this video. Nothing more, nothing less probably, because it has some content. Let's get going because of the time issues. Ding Liren, Hou Yifan, my first game that I'm going to cover here. And this is probably the least exciting of the bunch, but still have a look. Hou Yifan goes for the Rogozin variation in the Queen's Gambit. Pretty popular nowadays. See, she's playing this for a while now and with good results. The line chosen here is one of the it's not one of the main lines, that would be wrong, but one of the current battlegrounds that are discussed in top level chess. E3, C5, or sorry, G5 first, and now C5. Yeah, this is the way Black is handling this kind of opening, with very active play. G5 breaking the pin, C5, now Queen A5 is coming for counterplay. There was a recent game between a Ganguly Indian player and Yu Yangyi, one of China's top players. He might be number 2 or 3 in the rating list of China, where D takes C5 was played, and Ding now went Rook C1. Yeah, Queen A5 by Hou Yifan, and now the move Knight D2 is a novelty here by Ding. Yeah, and everything played pretty quickly, so probably they had this on their radar. Yeah, Hou Yifan now took on G3 after a longer think. Yeah, she could have taken on D2 and played C4. It would have been a very sharp game coming from that. Something like this, Black, yeah, snatching the pawn, but it is very dangerous. Something like this is something that I wouldn't like to see as Black. Getting this thread in, and well, this king looks a bit weird, but long term Black's king will be in danger because there's little pawn cover anywhere on the board. Yeah, she didn't do that. She took on G3. I think this is also the far more circumspect decision. Taking now here and Knight F6, and Ding is still playing quite quickly. I think this is a position where Black pretty much has decided to go to defend a slightly worse position, but something that is defendable. It's not just downright awful. She took on C3 and now Rook C8 to further simplify. The important point here after that trade is that with that pin, White doesn't have an easy solution to his king position. White cannot just castle here, which he would like to do probably. And this is the thing. How is White going to get out of this? Ultimately, Ding decided to put an end to the pin with Queen B4 and allow a queen trade. This endgame, of course, if we look at it, must be a little bit better for White because of Black's weaknesses. Yeah, this is a far more real problem, or H6 at D5, than the white pawn on B4. But it seems to be still okay. Knight B1 now by Ding. Very logical move going to C3. However, an interesting line is given here by the engine, which is quite remarkable. Knight F3, attacking G5. And now Black can defend this with King to D6. As Knight G5, there's Rook E8. Yeah, Black wins a piece, getting out of the pin with check. So King F1, yeah, is an idea at least. And Black is defending with this nice move. And then all of a sudden, Rook C8 threatening checkmate. Knight F3. And here Black remarkably can take, check, trade, and go back to E8. Shooting for either, for either B5 or E6 to get the D4 pawn back. Quite remarkable line. Yeah, it shows how resilient Black's position is. In the game, Knight B1 is played, And they continued for some more moves, but black ultimately wasn't in any serious danger. Yeah, white always is a bit more active, but yeah, we had some trades there. Yeah, and a draw. So the third draw here for Hou Yifan. She's a rating underdog in almost all of the games and did a good job so far. Not even being into any substantial trouble. Next game to check is Wesley So Sergei Karjakin. D4. Yeah. So is mostly, not sure, but I think most of the time he plays E4, but this tournament he's going for D4 and C4, and again here. In general, we have not seen a single Berlin defense. Is that true? Don't remember, at least. Maybe like one game or so out of 14, but not that many. Okay, this is Catalan opening, and Karjakin plays the move bishop b4 check. Slight surprise, he normally plays bishop e7 and castles. The difference is that in this kind of position, black is normally not taking on c4, as the move bishop d2 can provide a useful extra move compared to the move 4 bishop e7 without the check. Giving that check actually shows black's intention to now keep the center, not take on c4 but keep it, because in a position with c6, this is what black is doing, the bishop rather wants to be on c1 to fianchetto. On d2 it is kind of, misplaced is a bit strong, but it's not the best possible square. What white is doing usually is to go for this, go for a bishop f4 based setup, but this in comparison is less desirable than fianchettoing this piece. Yeah, black went bishop a6, bishop b7 is also moved, but bishop a6 is the more active approach. Knight to e5, rook c8, knight c3. Yeah, very typical way to proceed. White is giving up a pawn there temporarily, but takes the center. Karjakin is keeping this, and we see with the time spent, Karjakin definitely within preparation, and so probably as well. a4, a6, and now d5. Yeah, this is the most normal move ever, but still is a novelty. Well, it's not a very frequently discussed position, but it's still a new move. d5, however, is the most logical move in the position, because white wants to open up, break open the center, and get some room for his bishops. In some cases, he also just wants to dislodge that c6 pawn so that he might get something back on the queen side with a takes b5, a takes b5, knight b5. The whole game now gets very forcing. We see black taking, white recaptures, and e5. And we still see that Karjakin is within his preparation. Move 17, but the moves leading up to this are very logical. Yeah, e5, now bishop is attacked, and went to g5. Black b4, and white pretty much has to go d6. Yeah, I mean, white is a pawn down, and he has to get something going. If you play some kind of retreat move, black plays queen b6 and stops the d6 pawn to, or the d5 pawn to go even further, and you really don't see any compensation here. So d6, yeah, just use the momentum. B takes c3 and queen c3. White can take that bishop later, of course. Yeah, h6, bishop e3 back, e4. Yeah, black is still playing rather quickly, and now white is set to get this back. Rook e8, the first move where Karjakin thought a little bit longer. Now we get an endgame. And in this endgame, if we do a quick count, black is a pawn up, but he's got two knights against two bishops. Also, a6 is weak, and the general or the initial assessment is probably true. I immediately thought, okay, well, white should always get a pawn back to equalize the game. It's hard to believe that white can play for an edge, but he definitely should have enough activity. Rook d6 played, attacking a6. What black cannot do is just give up the a6 pawn for nothing. So rook e6, rook d1, and knight e5. Black is activating that knight. And with bishop h3, white is now forcing that trade. It still looks kind of tricky. If the a6 pawn gets lost, rook b8, however, attacking the pawn on b2. And now king g2 was played. Why? You can ask why. Yeah, if white takes on a6, black is taking this. The idea is if rook b8, if king g2, rook b2, there is bishop d4. So the pawn is protected temporarily, and it is black's move now. The thing is, if black is now playing something else than what he played, he still has to suffer. What is this pawn all about? If you lose it for nothing, not a good idea. Karjakin finds a good way to defend. He plays c3, freeing that c4 square. So after taking, he goes knight c4. Now a6 is dropping, but black has a concrete and strong counterplay. Takes, takes, knight d5. Yeah, this is how a good defense works nowadays. Black had an extra pawn, but has returned or has given up 2 pawns. Now he's 1 pawn down, but he's active enough now to clearly secure the draw. Not just hanging around, let's say, passively in some kind of position. They want clarity nowadays. Rather give up material for active play. f5 cannot be taken because of the fork. c4, check. And now black gets this activity that he wanted with rook f8. Yeah, and here get this back and can easily draw this position. Yeah, black is a pawn down, but there's absolutely nothing that can happen here. Black has a very easy draw by just staying on the 6th rank with the rook, and white, of course, has no way forward. Yeah, if white goes for a trade, we get this very typical draw. Yeah, with black just running into the corner here, and the h-pawn cannot promote. Yeah, not a super exciting game, but a very correct game. Both sides, I think, played close to perfectly. I think it was very high quality game, just not very exciting for the spectators. We'll have something spectator friendly later. Let's go for the next game. Wely Tomashevsky, and we had a Queen's Indian. Yeah, many d4 games in this tournament. Queen's Indian is part of Tomashevsky's repertoire, but surprisingly he went for bishop to b7 here, which is, I mean, it's the most normal looking move ever. But in recent years, I know recent means like last 30 years, shows that I'm getting really old. Recent years, yeah, since the 80s. Bishop a6 is the main move, attacking the c4 pawn, and quite often leading to a little bit of more, let's say, dynamic play than bishop to b7. Bishop b7, however, has never been refuted or anything. It's just not so common nowadays. Bishop g2, bishop e7, knight c3, castles. Slight surprise. Yeah, the common or most common way to play, let's say, is to, whenever white plays knight c3, to get in knight e4 and be ready to trade here. Yeah, white plays bishop d2 or queen c2 is the normal way to play. But Tomashevsky castles. He had probably a specific idea in mind, and this is allowing that d4, d5 push. Something that black has to be very careful with. That d5 pawn is really severely restricting the bishop. If you don't get any play against that pawn center, your life will be quite difficult. He immediately starts with counterplay, bishop b4. That's very important. You absolutely should not sit there passively. Bishop b4 is increasing the pressure there, and in some cases black will just take on c3 for doubling of the pawns and playing against the weak queen side. White castles. Black takes and plays knight a6. Yeah, white's pawn structure looks pretty awful, but on the other hand, he has more space and some really good activity. Yeah, here now bishop a3 was played. Also quite normal looking move, attacking that knight there on c5. And in some cases, white may just take on c5 and play for rook b1, play on the b file. That bishop sometimes on b7 is not in such a lucky spot. Yeah, here Tomashevsky played an interesting move. It seems like this is a novelty. And it actually involves a pawn sacrifice. He plays the move d6. In some master game, rook b8 was played. This is the somewhat more conservative idea, let's say, with this rook covering the bishop. With d6, Tomashevsky actually allows a little move sequence that happens. D takes e6. And now, yeah, in this position, it's a bit tricky. If black quickly captures here, then of course bishop b7, knight b7, knight e6 is very embarrassing. So black cannot recapture. He can also not take with the knight as b7 is hanging. So taken on g2. Check. And now e takes f7, check. Rook takes king g2. Yeah, what is that? Was that the pawn blunder from black? No, it wasn't. Tomashevsky, I think, willingly sacrificed this pawn. And this idea, or this kind of pawn structure, is quite funny. Quite a funny coincidence. It's kind of known from the Budapest Gambit. There is one particular line where exactly this structure is happening. One difference to the Budapest is that in the Budapest Gambit, usually white retains the bishop pair a bit longer. Here the bishops have been traded, and black claims compensation in the form of those weak pawns and yeah, good active pieces. Knight on c5, knight on f6. Does black have enough compensation? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. In fact, I think the black position is somewhat easier to play even. He tried knight to g4, which is activating this piece in some way, going here, possibly looking at c4. We shouldn't forget, however, that it also has a neat little trick that is worth remembering. If white is playing some kind of lazy move, not paying any attention, then check. Rook takes f2 is very embarrassing. Yeah, the idea is that check. The queen is in a big fork. So white should pay attention, and he did. Knight f3 back. Yeah, now this knight comes to e4. We see how active those knights are. And I think most of this here is rather logical. Yeah, white is keeping c4. Black is maneuvering around a little bit and went to a4 here with the queen, going for a queen trade. Black doesn't mind to trade queens, even though he's a pawn down with queens off. I think he feels like any possible counterplay against black's king. I mean, that doesn't look very dangerous, I have to admit, but it's not happening. And the queen was at least defending a little bit here, helping. So traded, knight e4, and black got the pawn back. White really did not mind that so much. I think the double pawn was never in any big danger of promoting. It didn't look like very essential to have two c-pawns. So I think that white was okay with giving the pawn back. We had a couple of more pretty normal looking moves, nothing fancy or needing explanations. What, however, was a bit surprising is that after rook f5 here, Tomashevsky offered a draw, which was accepted. I don't agree with that decision. I find this a bit weird because, well, okay, I'm not saying that he's like, very, very clearly better than Wely, but he's slightly the better player, higher rated, and isn't this position kind of comfortable for black? You have two pawn islands against two and 2 against 3, I'm sorry. White has A and C pawn isolated. I'm not saying that black is hugely better. I think it is just maybe a little nibble. But shouldn't you play on? I don't know. If you give me this position against someone like 100 points lower than I am, I would continue. Unless I really have something great to do that evening. Yeah, I don't know. A bit strange in my book. Why not play on a little bit? There was no particular reason to draw this game. Okay, anyway, that was Wely Tomashevsky. What is the next game? I have to really check carefully to make it kind of within order of interest. Yeah, okay, I'm going for Wely Carlsen. A much awaited game. It was very often discussed, that first encounter between the Chinese prodigy and the world champion. I was a bit surprised that this was such an anticipated game. I mean, it's happening at one point and it's still not any kind of great competition. I mean, Carlsen is just clearly the stronger player, but still, it's interesting to see what happened. We had, in my book, surprising opening. I mean, this wasn't surprising, but he is an e4 player, but I was surprised that Carlsen went for the Marshall attack. That would be one of the, would be pretty low on my list of openings to suggest against Wely, who's a very good calculator. And the Marshall attack main line here has very little strategic chess content. It has, you mostly need to be excellently prepared and be a great calculator. There are some endgames maybe where you have to assess correctly if you are pawn down, if you draw comfortably or not. But I would have rather expected a Breyer or something like that. Some kind of slowish maneuvering game with many pieces on the board. I think in this kind of position, Carlsen is a heavy favorite against Wely, even though with black, okay, anyway. Still surprised that he went for some kind of, very open position. We had this line here with d3 rook e1. I have to say I'm not an expert on this opening. Absolutely not. Queen f3 and now queen h4 played by Carlsen, threatening on h2. Yes, this is hanging on f5, but if white decides to take it, check, he gets into huge trouble here. Yeah, if white blocks e5, for example, now knight f4 is winning immediately. Yeah, it's very tactical, but of course they both know their way around. Yeah, g3, queen to h3, bishop e3. Yeah, this is the way it is normally played here by white to speed up development. White is returning that d3 pawn. And now white catches up. What white is shooting for here in this line is normally a slight, very slight advantage because of better development. I mean, better development is wrong, but yeah, you catch up in development, and sometimes black has to react to his threats. d5 is sometimes hanging with a pawn loss, bishop d5, cd queen takes, and knight e4 is coming. We'll see what happens in the game. Queen f5 is a pretty typical thing out of this opening. Bishop d4, rook a8, king g2. Yeah, and here at this point we got the first new move, queen takes f3 check by Carlsen. There was h6 in an earlier game between Vashila Graf and Mickey Adams in Biel 2015. Well, check. This is a very normal looking move, so king takes, and now rook e6 by Carlsen. He's playing this very quickly, probably still being in preparation while he was thinking. Yeah, this kind of endgame I think is is quite rawish. Rook c1, h6, and king g2. Yeah, after some thought. The move c4 here was possible and looking very logical, in fact. But it doesn't seem to lead to much. Black can trade and defend with the cute counter attack here, c5. Yeah, an important point is that after c takes, knight e4 takes, rook takes, that black has got nothing to fear here. Even if he loses that pawn, he will draw very comfortably with opposite colored bishops. Yeah, this was played by Wely. Rook g6 for possible knight f4. Knight e4. We see that white's time is ticking down a little bit. Check. Maybe also influenced by the situation. It's not that easy to play your first game against a world champion, I assume. I never had the honor, so I cannot really tell from experience, but those kind of first games against a certain class of player is always a little bit tricky. Yeah, I remember first games against the grandmaster and so on. It's kind of a weird situation. Yeah, so here that pawn got lost. It is not that it was blundered. I think he calculated that this precisely. He in general is a very good calculator. Black here after rook d2 has very little chances of just keeping the pawn, as white's pieces are so active. Yeah, the knight here is basically trapped and has to go back somewhere here, and then white will get the pawn back, or as it happened here, rook d6. Yeah, white went around here. Check. And again, it looks like black should do something with the pawn, but it's ultimately very, very problematic. That is hanging, has to go back to e7, f4. Yeah, white always has this initiative. And black cannot play anything else here. If you go somewhere here, then after rook d7, you're even worse. Yeah, with this pressure. And those pawns are, oops, sorry, I meant a6, are weak. So knight c4 and rook d7. White has a compensation for the pawn. Bishop f6. That got traded. And now rook b8 is a precise move by Carlsen. In fact, he manages to get some kind of symbolic advantage here with the active rook. However, check. It should never be something that leads to a win for black. Yeah, here he got in g5. Black is a little bit more active. Yeah, so white has to be careful. He cannot play any kind of nonsense, but he defended this precisely. King g2, king g7, h4. Yeah, white needs counterplay. Let's get a passer. g4. Yeah, and now very important, white, I mean, even though that probably draws, white can stick on the a file, keep that pawn, but if you have the alternative, passive defense, active defense, always go for active defense. Rook c3. Yeah, he gave up that pawn and put his rook on the 6th rank. And this is a very instructive way of defending. The rook is blocking the 6th rank, so the black king cannot approach easily. If the black king tries to go over here to the queen side, then the h pawn will start to move. So how is black supposed to make any progress? Check. He checked and pushed the a pawn forward, and white is just sitting there. Couple of checks. Check. Couple couple of checks. A3, king g1, and here the game was drawn. Yeah, there's absolutely no way forward, so that defensive formation held up nicely.
Check.
If black does something like that, the issue is that there is also no way forward. Yeah, white is just staying on the A file, and if black starts to run, then the H pawn will go. And the rook on A1 can never move without dropping the pawn. There might be situations where, let's get rid of a couple of arrows. There might be situations where black gets these two pawns against the G3 pawn, but this is also still a dead draw. So a draw in this game. As I said, I was a bit surprised by the opening. That was the most surprising about the game. I would never thought of the martial attack as the right opening against Wely. Maybe Carlsen was expecting an anti-martial. That's certainly possible. But if you have the martial in your repertoire and you play against someone who's happy with a draw, then they will probably get it. Yeah, I mean, this kind of line that Wely chose here is super safe. Very difficult to lose with white. Okay, unless you really try hard to win, yeah, then you can lose. So let's see what games we have left, and I have to get some speed here, otherwise it's getting too late for me. So I'm going with Caruana Adams, and to be honest, I don't understand the game. I'm totally honest there. I don't understand this game at all. So let's see. Let's look at a couple of things. We had a Nimzo and knight f3, b6, e3, all kind of normal. This has been seen for it's a totally normal line, let's say. Takes, knight e5, knight bd7, and f4. An interesting approach by Caruana, maybe angling for a kingside attack if black is not going for quick counterplay. Something like rook f3, h3 comes to mind, or queen, the same thing with the queen f3, h3. Black should get some counterplay, and he did. c5, knight to e2, maybe trying to sideline that bishop to a5. Black played c4, bishop f5, and now g6 by Adams. Yeah, a very strategically imbalanced position type. g6, according to my database, is a novelty, even though we can be pretty sure that this wasn't a core part of preparation in this game. An interesting move now by Caruana. He goes queen to a4, and we see that he took a lot of time there. It's kind of interesting that is hanging, and d7 is also hanging. So we will get a very unusual pawn formation. G takes, queen takes. And this is a very strange position. Black's structure looks weak with a doubled f pawn, but he has a fantastic square on e4 that cannot be challenged at all, while white's outpost square on e5 can be challenged with f6. This is a pretty big difference. My first impression here, I have to admit, was that black should be totally fine. Yeah, you got potential 3 against 2 here on the queen side, and I couldn't really see what white's point was with this position. What, however, it has to be said is that this is a pretty bad bishop, and white's bishop, it's not beautiful either, but it has some ideas to activate, possibly over d2, b4. The game, I understood most of this now. f6, white did not want to trade, and black found that d7 is not a great spot for the knight. He rerouted it to c6. Okay, bishop d2, king h8. Black clears for the g file. And Caruana went for knight to h4, attacking f5, looking at one of those weaknesses. Yeah, the some curious situation comes up a little bit later. Here, Adams chose to take with the rook, which I understand. It looks like the e-file is more of an asset, and there was no big hurry or need to take with this pawn to kind of straighten the pawn structure. He could have done that, but I understand why he didn't. That looks a little bit more dynamic, this move maybe. Queen d1, rook g8, queen h5. I mean, all of that I kind of get. The rook is coming over. White keeps the queen. And now b4. Interesting move here. White tries to do something on the queen side. If after b4, if black takes, then white will get the pawn back. Yeah, Adams didn't take. He just said, okay, this is a protected pass, so that cannot be so bad. Knight e7, rook h3. Yeah, just mostly I think trying to irritate black a little bit with counter threats. This is not a big attack or anything. Yeah, rook g4, knight f3 back, bishop d7. All this looks kind of normal. Threat is knight g8. Queen doesn't have any squares, so white plays rook g3. And yeah, I mean, around here, isn't black fine? I can hardly believe that he should have problems. It seems that here he should have taken on g3. This is probably giving black a slight advantage. Rook takes, probably king takes. Pawn takes weakens even more. And now something like this is given by the engine. The move c3 is mostly possible because the king is there, but if white is taking with the pawn, you have to also, yeah, this is always kind of, it's hanging over white's head. It's really, really difficult. There's this kind of additional idea. It's like this, oops, sorry, and h5, and the knight is coming around. Here only black can be better. I think that king takes is really stronger, but after c3 or this and then c3, black seems to be better. This is really bad. Yeah, with black entering the position. And bishop c1, there's like queen c7, c4. I think black is fine here. And I think he always was fine. It cannot be a really bad position for black. Yeah, he played knight g8, queen h3. So what I'm pretty positive is that this was an improvement. But what I'm not sure about is a couple of things later. Bishop d7, okay, b5. He played a5 now. And I wasn't sure, is that really necessary? And does it help black? Yeah, I mean, I understand that white was possibly shooting for a4, a5. Still, I don't know. Yeah, white took. And now white got this regrouping in. And it felt like it's more helpful for white. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a super difficult strategic position. Yeah, h5 was played. King g1, king is going back, and knight h6. Here the engine gives b5, trying to trade even more and get rid of that b pawn if possible. White can go a5, but then knight e7, c6 is an idea. This is what the engine gives us better, but I still felt like this shouldn't be a big deal. Knight h6. Yeah, you have this this possibility sometimes. Yeah, but now white played a regrouping. The rook was coming all the way over, and now that weakness is felt. And this is why I'm questioning a5, but I'm not 100% sure if not playing a5 would have helped. So this game is a slight mystery to me. I have to really say that I don't quite understand where exactly Adams drifted into a bad position, because now it is pretty bad. Yeah, he's sitting on weaknesses mostly and has a hard time to defend them. d5, b6. White just is activated while black is basically sitting in the same kind of situation he was yeah, a couple of moves ago.
Check.
Yeah, ultimately that got lost. And there is no dangerous counterplay. White just took the h pawn and now continues to press on the queen side. That get lost, and we had a couple of more moves, but here Adams resigned. A slightly mysterious game for me. I think there was this one possibility certainly where Adams could have gotten a good position, but it somehow wasn't clear to me how exactly he drifted into that bad situation. Yeah, I had to rush this a little bit because the next two games are really interesting. So let's see what happened in those. Mamedyarov, Eljanov. We had a semi-Slav with a6. A very decent line for black. However, this is an interesting sideline with knight e5 takes knight g4. First impression is, isn't black just blundering the h7 pawn? In fact not. If white takes,
check,
and goes to h8, then here e5 is hanging and black will get that back because white does not have any f4 move.
Check.
Because of this, losing the bishop. So white shouldn't take. He went f4 in this position, Mamedyarov did, and now black was black had to answer this question, what to do about h7. It seems that bishop c5, what Eljanov played, is fine, counter-attacking that pawn. Now king e2. Yeah, taking is not a great idea because now e3 is hanging and queen g4 is threatened. And white doesn't have an answer to both threats. So king e2, covering e3. And this seems to be an absolutely critical moment early on in this game where rook d8 was played by Eljanov. And it seems that after this move he is in some trouble already. The computers, or in my case it's a Stockfish, they suggest the really brutal move, not as the only move, but the brutal move f6, which is very hard to play for a human player. h7 is hanging with check, and some lines look downright crazy. For example, the engine says that black is okay in this position, which is something that I think no sane human being would even contemplate. Yeah, black is a piece down, and h7 is hanging with check, but he's got enormous counterplay with queen g5 if the pawn takes and so on. It's very tough. I don't think that Eljanov had this on the radar at all. He played rook d8. I mean, he can also go g6, by the way. He does not have to play that crazy stuff, but you don't want to play a passive move like g6. He played rook d8, trying to again sacrifice that, and taking wasn't that brilliant. Yeah, it takes a little bit too much time. So Mamedyarov played this. He actually had a good alternative here in knight a4 that he did not go for. That is an interesting move. The idea is that if black goes back, white might take and possibly shoot for bishop a5. A very weird kind of situation with the rook on d8. Yeah, knight a4 was interesting, but he went h3 and black now took on e3. That was the idea. Yeah, no passive retreat giving away h7. So this happened. And with d4, black is getting the piece back. The problem is, however, that in this position, white is just better. Yeah, if black is now taking time to cover one of the pawns here, yeah, let's say it goes g6 or h6, that doesn't really matter. Then queen c3 happens, and how is black going to untangle his position? White is threatening c5 even here. So let's say black goes c5, then bishop e4, and you cannot develop this. It's just a pretty bad position. Eljanov didn't want to stick in this super passive position, so he decided to play here, give the pawn, and now shut down the diagonal here with f5. It's clear that black's whole opening went totally wrong. Yeah, white has a great position, and it turns out that if we go a little bit further ahead, black could only hope for a miracle there with a pawn down and the worst structure. He actually decided to ditch a second pawn for some kind of activity. Yeah, this move is not very much liked by any engine, but I understand the point. The c-pawn is weak anyway, and you want to get your queen in for some kind of play. Still, it's 2 pawns, and white should definitely win the game. So, all of that is, check. I think, pretty logical. White's king is going over to g3, later to h2 to be more secure, and white just has 2 pawns. Nothing more, nothing less. Yeah, queen e4. The black queen is attacking that rook on b1. Here, rook b6 was a pretty clean solution, but Mamedyarov went for queen g5, attacking that rook with check. And now Eljanov went rook c8. It seems that he should have tried queen takes b1, even though the queen endgame here is probably losing. Yeah, this is what he tried. And now the next move came to a complete shock to all of us watching. I happened to be was a circumstance to watch this. Yeah, now I think Mamedyarov just confused the move order. He wanted to play rook b6 and on many replies the move c5. And what he actually did is, he had 5 minutes on the clock, by the way. It was not like he was in time trouble. He played the move c5 first. And yes, if you ask yourself, isn't that rook hanging? It is. That happened. And Eljanov won. So this very early on is probably a heavy favorite for the biggest blunder in any top-level GM game. I think Mamedyarov just had a complete blackout. He was thinking like rook b6, attacking this, and yeah, on, I don't know, let's say black defends that pawn, you go c5. Yeah, he was simply playing the second move first, yeah, and somehow screwed up his move order. Yeah, tragic loss. He had completely outplayed Eljanov, and it would have been a very, very deserved win. Okay, so now the next and the last game, and I'm a little bit of a rush, but okay, it is what it is. We have a Grunfeld and the Russian variation, and now a6. This is the current main line on the top level, and also what Giri normally plays. We see that both players were playing quickly, and they certainly anticipated that this line would happen. Yeah, black is giving up a pawn for the moment, but he has good chances to get c5 back, and this is what happened. Knight e4, takes, knight g5. Yeah, white has a temporary activity. He's got more active pieces. Black has to go back. And now f4. Queen to b7. And bishop c5, attacking that rook. This is an early position in this game, but a very critical one. Here, Giri played the move rook e8, and he did so relatively quickly. It turns out that this is a pretty serious mistake, even though the reason why this is a mistake is less than obvious. Rook e8 should have been replaced by the move h6, attacking that knight. And after that, white has actually surprisingly wide choice. He can just return, but he can also try to sacrifice with a very unclear play. Something like that isn't clear to me at all, at least. Or he could shoot for the very weird looking move, knight to h7. That looks very strange. Yeah, but yeah, knight f6 check is coming. Quite a funny position, hard to assess. But he had to play a6, h6. Rook e8 is now punished with the amazing move f5 that Navara played relatively quickly. He probably spotted the idea earlier. Yeah, and what is this all about? The thing is, after g takes, bishop h5, black can resign, just like that. f7 is double attacked by knight and bishop, like this, and black cannot defend that pawn with any kind of move. It just lost, and this leads to disaster for the black king. So he had to take with the e-pawn, something that Giri did quickly because no alternative. Yeah, and now, bam, of course, yeah, the rook is sacrificed. Takes, nothing much else, yeah. You cannot just allow rook f7. And this is what would happen. If black plays this to defend, there's this cute move. Yeah, a very nice geometry. Takes, and again f7 will fall with disastrous consequences. So he had to take, and now bishop h5. White is a full rook down, but this threat is so enormous. Black only has one move to continue that game. This is bishop d5. He has to cover that, after which Navara, of course, played, bam, the second rook. Yeah. Okay, you get material back here. This is very much forced. And this position, white still is, if you count it, yeah, white is a piece down for a pawn. But, of course, the black king is in grave danger. Check. King has to go to g6. Check. They repeated this a little bit. Check. And now Navara, of course, deviated. He played queen f3. In this position, the move bishop d4 was also quite interesting, intending e6. I think white is better with this move, but I think he also was better in the game. Here, something that might happen is this, knight c6, e6 check, king takes, bishop takes, rook d8, a position like that, or rook e7. I mean, it's tough to say exactly. Maybe rook e7. White definitely is better here. He's gotten the piece back, and with equal material, black's king will be a constant source of worry. It's just very uncomfortable to play. White is objectively clearly better, and playing this is murderous, I guess, for black. What he did, queen f3, however, is also not bad at all. I think the real issue comes a little bit later. Knight d7. Check. Queen f5 was possible, but I think it's less dangerous. Something like this. Black is quite happy that his king is safe, and black will get this pawn. So the check here. Yeah, and this is a key moment, actually. It seems that here Giri should have played bishop to f6, which is not the most natural move ever, but it gives some drawing chances. Or, yeah, it gives drawing chances, definitely. Some sounds a little bit too bad. I think black has chances to draw, really. Best line seems to be bishop d4 against this. If white is taking here, rook d8 is even, yeah, it's promising nothing. Just black gets everything back. Yeah, so here, and the move bishop d4 is the relatively toughest. And now something like rook d8 takes, and knight e5 is what happens. In a position like this. Check. Queen h6. White still can continue this and is a little bit better. If he is winning, is very questionable though. The two rooks should be good to defend. This is what Giri should have gone for, that bishop f6. Knight f6, however, should lose the game. We'll see what happens. Takes, rook c8, queen takes. Yeah, it's already very difficult for black to defend this position. Normal moves don't cut it. Very cute, huh? Threatening here, and if rook takes, then a8 hangs. So this is why rook c8 was played. Queen takes, rook a8 back.
check.
And now f7 check. Nice move, check. And takes on b5. White is 2 pawns up. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at all. The key moment
check.
comes a little bit
Check.
later. We had a couple of checks and
Check.
repetitions to get the time control done. And here it's move 40, the notorious move 40, where Navara had to play a move. And instead of h4, which probably would have won, instead of this, he's 2 pawns up, yeah, with no particular compensation for black. He played the move bishop d6. That looks like a nice tactical idea, as rook d6 is failing due to queen g3 check. But the problem is that Giri simply could play bishop takes b2, just desperadoing this bishop. And it turns out that this is just a position with a pawn up, where black has good chances to get the a-pawn, simply by doubling up on that a-pawn. Yeah, this is a tragedy a little bit. It was a great game played by Navara, but he simply blundered in a way with that bishop d6 move. On move 40 of all moves, yeah, just one move later, and everything would have been fine. In fact, here on move 41, he was certainly very disappointed. He played queen takes b2. It seems that bishop f4 still gives some practical chances, yeah, keeping the bishops on. But after this, they already agreed to a draw. Yeah, black will double up on the a-pawn and win it. So, yeah, that was a bad end of the game here for Navara, who played excellently. Yeah, that f5, the rook sacrifice on f5, taking on d5. What a fantastic achievement. But ultimately, he didn't get the win in due to that mistake on move 40. So I think it was an interesting round, and much more interesting than round 2. We had a couple of decisive games, a huge blunder by Mamedyarov. It should have been a decisive game, but in his favor, instead of that, he blundered the whole rook. And we had Caruana's somewhat mysterious win against Adams that at least I couldn't really probably explain to you properly. Maybe someone else can, but I had my problems to understand why Mickey Adams all of a sudden got into that huge trouble. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.